the simplest ways to participate in Worlds, circumventing the multiple tiers of tournaments that one would have to do well at to qualify for the TCG. No acquiring real cards, no WCQ invite to get, no rounds of Swiss, no traveling, just one 3-day event stood between Josh and his 5th Worlds invite. At the time, Josh's livestream quickly became a topic of intense discussion. People knew about how taxing the grind to do well at these events was on paper, of course. The WCQ event system is a carbon copy of the Duelist Cup in Master Duel, which itself traces its roots back to similar tournaments held in Yu-Gi-Oh's Duel Links app. However, it's one thing to know that the players stopping these events are playing hundreds of games in dozens of hours, but it's very different to see it with your own eyes. Josh barely slept that weekend.
The tournament went on for 72 hours, and I have slept a total of, I think it was 9. I've slept 9 hours in 3 days.
His only breaks were to briefly use the bathroom, refill his water bottle, or quickly prepare something to eat. Any time spent away from the computer meant that other players could be climbing and threatening his placement. At the end of the weekend, Josh had played 421 games of Master Duel, placed 13th in the qualifier overall, netting him a spot as one of 2 players to lead a team of 3 from Europe to Worlds that year. His team would later go on to win the 2023 World Championship, cementing the precedent that in order to prove you're the best, you have to be willing to prove yourself. The format of Duelist Cup and the World Championship qualifiers, which I will refer to as just the Duelist Cup from here on out, has been scrutinized by many people because of the intense demand it has on competitors. 2-time Duelist Cup champion and Master Duel WCQ winner Tasku commented on the extreme grind during a rare English interview through a translator on Farfa's live stream in June 2023.
For the first 24 hours straight, he kept his energy drinks. So it's the same thing. He really goes for wow. So basically, the first 24 hours were really harsh. They actually fell asleep twice, which was 2 times at least in the game, which was for
Wait, he fell asleep mid-game?
Mid-game, yeah.
2024 Master Duel World Champion Ryan Yu has won 2 of these tournaments and talked about it at length on the Heart of the Cast podcast hosted by Joshua Schmidt and Farfa. On air, he had mixed feelings about the format.
I do think the format's actually relatively skillful. I mean, in terms of being a format where you want someone to be able to give it their all and then be able to prepare and potentially go around to getting successful. Also being focused on quality and it's changed in some way. I think it's so each now is the first time out there in that it's a part of the first total weekend. Just first year business keeps happening and something can actually actually prove themselves.
What makes this interesting is that many competitors also report that the Duelist Cup is very skilled. You can see it in the results. The same players like Tasku, Ryan, and a dozen others are able to keep placing highly in tournament after tournament. This is definitely rare for TCGs, which have a healthy dose of randomness because you draw a hand of cards from your deck every game. I asked World's competitor MD Grinder about his September 2024 Duelist Cup grind in a Twitter DM. He stated,
Cup format is very good and rewards the best players, but it's very different than a regular YCS tourney, so it takes some time to get used to how it's played, / how the event changes over the weekend.
Ryan Yu felt very similarly, stating this on the podcast.
In terms of like the world's qualification, it's like decent, not to sound it, I think it is decent for I think it's just complete fun.
What's tricky about this issue is that the skillfulness of the format and the intense grind demands are tied together. Due Due to the nature of statistics, the only way to measure the impact of an individual player's deck building and decision making is by tracking performance over a large number of games. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, luck will be a factor that determines whether or not you'll lose or win many games, but over a large enough sample size, you can begin to account for it and players by the differences in their deck building and technical play. This mitigation is important in allowing talented players like Tasku and Ryan to continually perform well, which might not be as reliably replicated in the tournament. Fewer games like a YCS, though Ryan has topped plenty of games too. This correlation between games played and skill displayed is a serious problem. The amount of grinding must be reduced.
Oh, it's a red star. That's useless.
However, this doesn't mean it's impossible. Master Duel is by no means the first game to host ladder tournaments. Pokemon Showdown is an online Pokemon battle simulator you can access from any web browser. With just a couple clicks, you can create an account, build a team, and compete against thousands of other trainers on a ranked ladder. Players are matched up and ranked on an ELO-based system, not unlike the Duelist Cup. Why is this relevant, you might ask? Well, every year, competitive Pokemon organization Smogon hosts the official ladder tournament, or OLT, which makes use of one of the Pokemon Showdown ladders for its qualification phase. OLT's 4 cycles are week-long ladder tournaments where players that place well can qualify for playoffs and the opportunity to win the whole thing. This is obviously completely different from Master Duel's Duelist Cups, which are 4 or 3 long ladder tournaments. It's an opportunity to win the something that might really be about to you is that OLT's ladder phases are a week long. Not only that, they're held back to back throughout the entire month of August every year. If the Duelist Cups are anything to go by, that means lots of protein bars, 4 hours of sleep, and 20 hours of Pokemon per day. Right? Luckily, we can easily look at the numbers. To this year's OLT, the average qualifying player played around 161 games, winning 113 of them and losing 48.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Schmidt played around 200 games of Master Duel, up the third day of his WCQ stream in 2023 alone. Playing 160 games at the same rate would have taken him just 19 hours, less than a third of the time. Qualified for this Duelist Cup OLT hybrid during his 3-day weekend, watched all 64 episodes of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, is still to get 10 hours of sleep every night. To directly compare the experience one might have when attempting to qualify for OLT, I've interpreted with some questions from people who qualify about things like the amount of time spent playing, the strategies used to cope with the fatigue, and what had to be forgotten while laddering.
Yeah.
I got a response from OLT 11 qualifier 3D, who was forwarded my questions by Smogon for Thanks a lot, both of you. Comparing his answers to the experiences of Tasku, Ryan, and Josh is honestly just comment. Question 3. Did you ever have to forego anything important in your personal life in order to play Pokemon, playing OLT, for example, work, school, eating, sleeping, chores?
I feel like a stabilizer might help. As fast as this is a really rowdy vehicle.
Question 4. Did you ever suffer from fatigue playing OLT, mental or physical? If so, did you do
But how would it handle slopes and stuff if I do that?
I was getting tired. So if I was higher up the ladder, I would only do one game at a time and try to run one game to make sure I was always at my peak. Qualified for OLT just using the allotted screen time I had when I was 10. While 3D's number of games played was on the low end, you would have to multiply his hours spent by over 8 times to equal what Josh and Ryan reported playing Master Duel for to go to Worlds. This was also over the course of a week, meaning it could be incorporated into a schedule in a much more effective manner. You have to wonder, why would the number of games played be so different for this compared to Duelist Cup? Well, there are other factors
Don't leave me.
at play here. For starters, it's tough to judge exactly how many people compete in the average Duelist Cup Stage 2 versus play on the Showdown ladder, since means non-OLT players, so for the purposes of this, I think it's fair to take the total number of OU players during OLT into consideration for this comparison. From the Smoke on Stats page, we know that throughout the month of August when OLT occurred, 1,141,008 battles were played in OU, 285,252 each cycle. If you make the extremely generous assumption that each player on the ladder plays the 15 battles required for the 50% chance of seeing every Pokemon overused each day, if you don't know what any of that means, don't worry. You can make a guess at the number of players each week. Since each game has 2 players, Showdown's OU ladder
well,
is seeing at the
it's
very least 5,430 distinct players each OLT cycle. The real number has to be much higher. But let's get back to that in a bit, since we still have this shitty estimation to do on the Duelist Cup. There's even less data to go off of here, since Duelist Cup lacks any sort of public stats outside of Steam charts, which are about as useful as this number on the Showdown homepage. Next we can do is look at the placings, which have rewards for the top 10,000 duelists, meaning that there are at least 10,000 duelists. I couldn't find a lot of information, but off tends to be around for the top 10,000 outside of this Reddit post. A player scored 14,265 points and got the
right. I've been avoiding these for a while now. But I now have the thing necessary to ensure
the event is going on.
these are always going to be easy to fulfill.
20,000th place. And from my own experience playing Stage 2, I know that you only need a few thousand points to get on the leaderboard. So my guess would be that the total number of Stage 2 duelists who play any ladder matches at all might be in the 30,000s. There's no real way to know for sure, but I wanted to get across that while I do think Duelist Cup participation is much higher than the number of people playing OU on Showdown during OLT, these tournaments are probably in a similar order of magnitude from each other. Additionally, there's the factor of who qualifies to mention. OLT is rather simple. The 8 best participating players qualifying each cycle. Master Duel is a little more roundabout. During the Duelist Cup, the winner will go to Worlds. The WCQ, the highest placing player in each of the 5 regions, will go to Worlds. Additionally, 2 more teams of 3 can qualify by having the highest number of points collectively after all the Duelist Cups of that year. These players can earn these points at each respective Duelist Cup. The system is kind of an all-or-nothing approach. To get to Worlds, you're incentivized to win the Duelist Cup, just like your region in the case of the WCQ. There's no point where you can be considered comfortably in the top 8 and take a break, since nothing less than first is good enough. I think we're going to get to this one now, though. I don't think we're going to once you're qualified by winning, you can invite 2 other players to be on your team at Worlds. Qualifying by points is a nice compromise, but only 6 Worlds players get to go due to their consistent performance. This means that of the 36 players at Master Duel, theoretically only 16 of them need to have played in any of these tournaments to get there, which is its own can of worms. We should also discuss the fact that while OLT is played on an established format, most starts every player from 0 DP. This means that the top of the DC ladder consistently grows over the course of the weekend. This can cause problems over time, since until the tournament begins to shake out matchups with new opponents. This is what we see. So we see an approach to play that many tournaments where other players are seeded. It is the difference between competitor and computer. Let's also briefly touch on the type of games we're comparing here. In a lot of ways, competitive Pokemon has many similarities to a card game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Games are turn-based, require the player to decide and build a deck or team that they will use, and have an element of hidden information around these decisions. I have a video all about this kind of thing if you're interested. The games include elements of skill expression in both their technical play and team and deck building choices, but also include a heavy dose of RNG. No matter how good of a player you are, you will lose games of Yu-Gi-Oh! To your opponent's hand being better than yours, and you will lose games of Pokemon to your opponent scoring a critical hit or getting some kind of beneficial status effect.
Zero cooks yet again, you might beat this thing. Inspire type 2. Yo! It's fine, it's fine.
I lost! Oh shit, I lose.
The two were directly compared, though. Probably concluded that G would have a greater impact. In Josh's climb, he won 58% of the matches he played, and the vast majority of the games he lost were due to factors outside of his control. This is less than the average of multi golfers, of 173% of games. It's a factor of both. I think luck is more statistics of this do come with a bit of an asterisk. Josh was known for switching to Sprite during his May 2023 WCQ climb. His regional tier limits at the height of their strength. They made the choice to change strategies. He didn't necessarily do this because he thought Sprite would have a deck
It is the faster. I will say that.
This is present in the data too. On Jonathan's first 24-hour stream of laddering, mostly tier limits, he played 133 games. On his second 24-hour stream, where he played mostly Sprite, he was able to play 203. I don't have great data on Josh's win rates between his time laddering with Sprite versus the Shizu tier limit during this format, because he played a mix of decks on day 3. I can say that many people in the top 100 of the WCQ also played decks that won or lost quickly. Of the 36 players with reported deck lists on Master Duel Meta for this event with almost full power to Shizu tier limits, 25 reported playing decks like Exosister, Sprite, Neuron, Pendulum, or similar strategies for at least some of their time climbing. But these decks are different from each other. All of them lack the complicated game states and the grind game of tier limits, which should mean that games wrap up much more quickly than a tier mirror. With this in mind, we begin to circle around an interesting question. What is it that makes speed so important in Master Duel, to the point where people would consider a strategy that they feel might sacrifice win rate in exchange for it? In OLT, win rate is king. People usually don't need to prioritize efficiency, since they are not coming close to grinding for the majority of the ladder tournament. The number of people even qualified with less than 100 games played due to their exceptional win rate. This is why 3D only played an hour at a time.
By the way, this rain will not stop.
To keep his mind fresh in order to ensure his win rate was as high as it could be. But the influence of luck is more of a factor in Yu-Gi-Oh! This alone does not account for who is causing the extreme grounded duelist cup. We have to look at the scoring system. Earlier, I said that the ELO system of Showdown wasn't unlike Master Duels.
I was actually using an advanced technique there called wide.
The devil really is in the details here. To see the difference, we need to understand what ELO actually is. ELO, named after its inventor Arpad Elo, so it really annoys me when people capitalize it like this, is a system for ranking the talents of players that are playing competitive games. It was originally invented for chess, and has been expanded for use across a variety of games. The basic idea is that when you are playing a ladder, you will gain bonus points from your ELO score, depending on whether you win or lose your matches. In a game where your ELO is higher than your opponent's, you are expected to win that game more often than not, and thus you will gain less than the average number of points for a win. If you are the underdog, however, expect to gain many points for a win against a higher-rated opponent. There's a bit of math that goes into this that allows each player's rating scales on a distribution and uses it to calculate their odds of winning. In most games, people do not perform at the same level every time, but are influenced by an uncountable number of factors, like how much they've practiced, if they got enough sleep the night before, their significant other recently broke up with them, and if they drew better sleep. There's an exceptional video on this by Ziggy that explains it very well, so if you're interested in the math of how ELO actually works, I would highly recommend it. Typical implementations of ELO like showdowns factor in each player's forecasted odds of winning after the game into how much rating they gain and lose. If you tune into any game on the showdown ladder, you'll see that in almost every instance the winner and loser gain and lose the same amount of points, because showdown has a very standard implementation of ELO with only a handful of creative liberties taken. By comparison, the Duelist Cup's implementation is very creative. It's a little tougher to get data on how it works, however. Recalling so much information about Joshua Schmidt's performance in the May 2023 WCQ, it's because I spent around 5 hours of my life combing through his entire 62 hours of stream files and meticulously recording how many points he gained and lost. It's worth it. At least the results are interesting. This is a histogram showing the distribution of the points lost after each of the 177 games Josh lost. This histogram has a bucket size of 10, meaning that each bar graph represents all the games with losses in a given 10-point range. There are a couple of observations to think about. The first thing that I noticed is that there's a sharp peak here in the distribution. This lines up with the median of the dataset, which is 1,068 DP lost. Secondly, you might notice that there are a number of outliers on the left, but there is a sharp cutoff for 1200 DP on the right of the chart. Something I learned while doing the research for this video is that Master Duel has a couple of rules that constrain how much DP you can gain or lose in a given game. Two of them are that you cannot lose more than 1200 DP for a loss, and that if you have less than 9000 DP, you will lose less for a loss. All of these outliers were losses Josh had in this early range. With that out of the way, let's look at the histogram of points from Josh's wins. You guess if there might be any other rules to the system? Anyone? Any other rules? This chart is fucking ridiculous. Did you know that of the 421 games Josh played, 205 of them, 49%, were games where he won and gained exactly 1,000 points? You might be wondering, why is this a problem? Well, this change breaks one of the fundamental principles of the ELO system. Competitors should gain and lose the same amount of points. Josh gains 1,000 points so often in his stream because he is a good player at the top of the map. Therefore, in most of his games, he is playing against people with good rating. By the rules of ELO, Josh should be gaining fewer points against the people he is expected to beat, but because of the 1,000 point minimum, his rating is being bolstered. This completely breaks an ELO system, which should expect higher and higher win percentages against average players the higher you climb on the ladder. With these caps, you're guaranteed to climb assuming you maintain a win rate of at least 55%, even if you always gain the minimum and lose the maximum. Doing this calculation using the real values averaged from Josh's last 24 hours of streaming, he could have climbed indefinitely, win rate as little as 52%. These evil rules are what turns the Duelist Cup into a tournament that requires you to play as much as possible, because the risk-reward is all off. We're hardly ever incentivized to sit on the score because climbing does not become riskier the higher you get, thus demanding a higher performance from those looking to be at the top. Instead, the Duelist Cup assumes players will climb, and instead compares the rate at which they climb. A rate that they mean by being a significantly better player than it can also be by playing more games with a faster deck and denying yourself this decision to change one of the fundamental rules of how ELO works is one of the biggest reasons why I think players need to play for 60 hours to win the Duelist Cup.
What the?
With all this in mind, let's briefly talk about how I think the system can be fixed. Here on, I have some data to support my assertions, so these will just be my opinions. Obviously, I think the Duelist Cup needs a real ELO system. Systems like Pokemon Showdown or even Master Duel's own rating tools feature are much more reasonable in relation to the ELO. If you go into Master Duel and look at the results for be curious to know how much grinding they do to achieve their spot, but since this video is already getting kind of long, I'm not going to delve into it. One thing to consider is that when using elo in a lab, if your round starts with no points, you will end up in situations where players at the top might be put in a position where they will be matched against opponents with fewer points. This scenario is why match gained 1,000 points so frequently during this climb. When this crops up, it would mean that wins would net top players very few points as the rest of the ladder struggles to catch up. And it would become very risky to ladder once you make it to the top. I think this is ultimately a good thing, because it might incentivize people to take a break and come back to it a few hours later for better returns. However, it would be worth considering just having stage come take place during a ladder for a limited period similar to LT. Perhaps our players who already have access to great games points. This might allow for better matchmaking at the top level, minimizing the gamble playing against opponents with much more elo. It could provide an extra incentive to climb the ladder and perform well on rating points as well. This might give those at the top of the games that might be too tough to surmount by people qualifying from stage 1. It's difficult to say. It would only hurt if an exceptional player can climb to the top of the ladder with a reasonable number of games, as it does with Showdown. The harder the cast is, the grind you, either interrupt shots and some of these suggestions have legs, but most of them also have some kind of additional downside that I think fixing the elo system lacks. This is an aside, but I'd also like to get rid of the 3 vs 3 invitation system for players winning the Duelist Cup. There's no reason that people should be able to attend Worlds due to an invitation received from another player, not as a result of them playing. The 3 vs 3 format is going to be capped, and the Duelist Cup ranking should be determined by the average score of all 3 team members that you register. Additionally, I think teams that are already qualified for Worlds should be marked in the in-game leaderboards to not incentivize unneeded grinding. That, I am out of characters, so I guess this video is over. This has been by far my most ambitious video essay today, so I'm super happy that it's done. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you
Right,
like
I think
and subscribe to
cannons are not very
and
energy
build
efficient.
my Patreon support. If you want to see new videos early and gain access
So
to my
let's take them out of the design.
spreadsheets used in this video, you can find my Patreon link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching.
Hello guys, DB1, and today we're back at it again with another 365 day of straight winning.
There you go, much better. The design needs to be facing our opponents, obviously. Right, there's no enemies. I can't tell. Woo! Oh, sure. Oh, I just realized this is a great sword that doesn't burn. Oh, the gnarled six stick is already pretty good. $34 base. 25 base. Honestly, even if I did repair this, it won't be as good. I'll stick to just the infamous Zonite bow, I suppose. Oh, that was crazy. Jesus. What? Obviously, there's no mod for this, so... I mean, it looks acceptable. Ugh. If I knew about the tech to make them pulse, that'd be so good. Oh, my guy didn't drop a blade. Sucks. No, seriously, the Golden Moblin Horn is too good. It's 45 over the Golden Lionel's 35. What? Like, that has to be a mistake. One I will not hesitate to take advantage of. I actually don't have anything I want to disassemble. Alright. Let's go repair shit. And then... I suppose it's about time we started on our... the Goron quest. This one doesn't need repairs, but I would like to have a modifier on it of some kind. Because this is a really good weapon. Although I should probably just wait. We gotta be efficient. I need arrows. I'm all out of arrows. I just need one more zonite shield thing, although I could maybe get rid of the fan shield. I don't think this will ever be all that useful. Nasty looking. Literal kind of straight up. It genuinely just looks nasty. Time to go buy arrows en masse. Oh, this is where I remember seeing a Free Knight's shield on the ground.
Wow!
Fine.
Sa sa! Woohoo! Yay! Yeah, yeah! Wow! Wow! Yeah, yeah! Woohoo! Wow! Yay! Hey! Wow! Huh. Oh. Ah. Oh. Ah. Oh. Ah.
Why is this taking so long? You're fucking killing me, man.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 changed the lore. Yeah, this movie straight up took one look at the games and said, I can do that better. And it might be fixing all of the problems we've had with the timeline because of it.
Huh.
Hello and welcome to Film Theory, the show that's possessing your YouTube homepage. The only way to make sure it doesn't destroy the whole website is open the subscribe button, check the music box, and let her in. So after years of waiting and more theories, you can count on one hand the Five Nights at Freddy's has finally hit theaters. I have to say, the culture around this movie really surprised me. People I followed for years, or other things, came out of the woodwork to express their love for this series with this movie. And that's just so much fun. And like, it just really created an environment in the theater that felt like peak 2010s midnight cinema releases. Theorists actually did a group outing watching the whole movie together, and we really appreciated the energy of our audience. Also, shout outs to the rad employee at the Cinemark Bistro here in Raleigh who talked to me on the way out of the theater. Yeah, here's the theory that I mostly bake in. And sorry I didn't catch your name, my brain was in full theory crafting mode. But thanks for saying hi. But speaking of theory crafting, there is just so much to talk about here. Like, first off, the fact that my friend, former film theorist, and official movie star voice actor Matthew Patrick completely disappeared into his role for this movie. Like, not gonna lie, if I didn't know that Matt were Toy Bonnie in this, I wouldn't have been put a clock in a positive way. But other than that, oh boy, does this movie do a lot for FNAF lore. So much so that when Tom and I had our little huddle talk after the movie came out, we both came away with so many questions and ideas left to explore. Like, what was up with that dream sequence Vanessa had? The puppet seems to have new powers here? What does that mean for the future of the series? And, oh god, a second mic has appeared in the movie theater. That right there is surprisingly huge. We have a lot to talk about, loyal theorists, so today I want to go through this movie and its plot to hit the biggest points of discussion and theorize about them. And by the end of our theory today, we're going to have a clear picture of what the future of the FNAF movies is going to look like. Because we're definitely getting like a dozen of these things. But here's the TLDW. The FNAF movies are Scott going back to tell the real story he always wanted to tell and putting the pieces of his mistakes back together again. Get your Freddy masks ready and hug an animatronic chicken, loyal theorists. We will always belong to the theorizing. So the film opens in 1982, where we're introduced to a new character named Charlotte Emily attending a birthday party in the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. This one is different than the location we've seen in the first movie, like we talked about in previous theories. Now, before, we've called this character Charlie because that was her nickname in other franchise material, but for simplicity's sake, and also because this version of the character ends up being way different than any other version of Charlie we see, we're just going to be calling the version of this character Charlotte to line up with everything we see in the movie. Overall, she's a bit of a strange kid, has an obsession with the puppet animatronic in this location, and is friends with a young Vanessa Afton. Off in the corner, she sees Afton dressed up as Golden Bonnie lure a kid into the back of the pizzeria, and when she tries to warn the parents at the party, they're honestly pretty huge jerks and ignore her, like comically so. The adults in this movie are just terrible people looking at you, Wayne Knight, the teacher, though the lawyer from the previous movie is back, and you know, at least he was cool. Anyway, because of this, Charlotte goes back on her own to try to rescue the kid, and successfully gets him away from Afton, only for her to run back onto the pizzeria's stage, scream, and then die. Afton stabbed her off camera, and her body falls into the arms of the marionette puppet. A genuinely awesome, if depressing, shot. It's also funny because I straight up said in our last theory that it would be cool if like the camera panned up to reveal that Charlotte had been stabbed, and that's exactly what happens. But that wouldn't really make sense with what was being sold as an accident. And yet somehow, in a little bit of a baffling move, it still is sold as an accident. Like, I went to the movie a couple of times and I tried to read through all of the newspapers about the accident that flashed up during the opening credits, and at least the parts that were visible didn't really have an explanation for how Afton convinced people that Charlotte somehow, like, fell onto a knife in her back multiple times. It's a little bit strange. Only one of the articles really said that foul play was suspected, and, like, yeah, obviously. But, you know, maybe I'm just not super creative. We then flash forward 20 years, confirming our previous theory that these movies take place in the early 2000s. So This one is in 2002. Somehow, Mike and Abby's aunt survives the previous movie despite it being heavily implied that she died. But Golden Freddy wasn't lying when he said,
Sorry, Jane. She fell asleep.
Anyway, the aunt has been using the story of the animatronics to try to make money, and all of the murders and ghosts and all that jazz have become popular folklore because of that. And I mean, like, really popular, like almost as if there were a whole series of hugely popular video
What
games
the
made
fuck?
on the
That's
subject, given how
useless.
enthusiastic all of the middle and high school age kids in this film seem
Why
to
is
be
the
about
jaw
Freddy.
black?
But, you know, we wouldn't really know anything about that in the real world. Real talk, I do love the acknowledgement of the fan base here. It's very cute. Anyway, things seem to be looking up for Mike and Abby. They're in a new house, Abby's in a new school, and the money troubles they had in the last movie are basically not mentioned here at all. It's also very clear that Mike and Abby are doing a bit better for themselves. Though they don't really talk about it, he seems to have started a new job that's let him invest in a new house, so it is a bit of a fixer-upper. Either way, affording a new home like this would have been easier for Mike to get working with a partner for today's theory, Chime. Especially because they're offering up to a $350 bonus, but we'll get to that. So if you don't know, Chime is the #1 most loved banking app, and millions of Americans use it to manage and save their money. And if you've seen the prices in stores these days, or are just trying to squeeze everything you can out of the holidays this year, you'll know that you'll want to save as much as you can. Chime offers a high-yield savings account, which offers up to a 3.50% APY. That's 8 times higher than the national average. Basically, this means that if you put, say,
How many times does that make it
$6,000
by
in one
now?
of these accounts, you'd be earning around $210 in a year instead of the $24 you get with the national average APY. That would be enough for a gift, like a pair of headphones during the holidays. And on top of that, Chime makes it just super easy to save. If you set up Chime as your primary direct deposit for your paycheck, you can get it so it automatically pulls a bit of that money straight into savings. So you can start building those savings without even thinking about it. Or you can even round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and put those quarters and dimes into savings every time you spend. It just makes it super easy to hit those New Year resolutions for savings. Best of all, Chime is offering a bonus of up to $350 with a new Chime account using my link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen. It's just more cash on top of all of the other money you'll be saving with your high-yield savings account. So thank you again to Chime for sponsoring this video, but let's get back to the wild world of Five Nights at Freddy's. Animatronics, however, seem to be either broken, or the spirits are gone, or dormant, or something like that. They just aren't really active anymore at all, much to Abby's sadness. Also, Vanessa isn't really doing too well either. She keeps having traumatic flashbacks about her father, which, you know, is understandable given the decades of abuse and literally being stabbed by him. With Mike's encouragement, Vanessa goes home and tries to confront her memories of her father inside of her head using her dream, similar to what Mike did with Garrett from the first movie. More or less, this looks like she's using something called lucid dreams to confront her nightmares. If you don't know, a lucid dream is one where you realize that you are asleep and dreaming, and because of that, you can kind of do whatever you want. Want to fly? You can. Want to shoot fireballs out of your hands? You can. I've only ever had like 2 in my life, and they were super fun. Though, that being said, I hadn't ever really heard of them being used in a therapeutic way like this. I did look into this a little bit, and there was a study from 2023 that examined this idea. Though it acknowledged that it needed to do further research with a larger study and sample size, the initial results were encouraging. So, hey, that's neat. We've got some scientifically accurate therapy here in FNAF. Anyway, we see Vanessa confront Afton in her dream, but he seems a bit too strong for her as she reverts to her child self. She runs and hides in his workshop in their home, finding the circus baby animatronic hidden here as well. It then lights up and looks down at her. It's a genuinely creepy moment. And obviously, this is significant for a few reasons. So, this is the film's version of the circus baby from the Sister Location video game, an animatronic that was haunted by the soul of Elizabeth Afton, daughter of the game's William Afton. So basically, the game version of the Vanessa character we have here in the movie. Elizabeth was also the age Vanessa is here in this dream sequence when she got put into the baby animatronic, so this was absolutely intentional on Scott's part. Oh, and additionally, in the books, Baby sort of was like Afton's helper, right? So this makes me wonder if he was planning on doing something similar here in the... And, you know, the very fact that Vanessa is still alive makes me wonder if Afton gave up on that particular idea, or if something happened that changed his plans. Or maybe someone else got stuffed into Baby. At this point, who knows? Oh, this does also add one small complication to something we saw in the FNAF 1 movie. If you don't remember, we also saw a somewhat similar Springlock animatronic in that first FNAF movie. this was the one that all of the ghost kids wanted to shove Abby into so that she would join them. However, looking back at this thing, it doesn't look a ton like the traditional baby animatronic, and it borrows some ideas from the Ella animatronic from the Silver Eyes novel. Just to be clear, I would
I wonder
guess
if
that this
wheels
was
can break
intended to
them.
be baby
Nope.
originally, but after the
Very
success of
sad.
that first movie, plans changed and they have introduced a more game-accurate version of baby in the film now. So genuinely no idea if we're ever even going to touch that Ella baby animatronic from the first movie again. It might just be lost to history. Oh, and something else worth pointing out in this scene. After encountering Baby, Afton finds Vanessa and says that she will always be his. She then runs away from Afton and manages to ministry herself over the edge of the stairway in an act of defiance. Falls to the floor, injured, but looks back up at her and says again that she will always. This line is later repeated by another character towards the end of the movie, saying that all of Afton's children will always be his. That they can't escape that fate. And what I find interesting here is what isn't said, right? I think that there was a way to incorporate Afton's iconic line about wanting to put things back together right here in this spot. Like, hey, I wanted to put our family back together, even from beyond the grave. So I wonder if this film is going to be Afton's obsession slightly. Like, instead of wanting to put the broken pieces of his life into animatronics and family back together, Afton is obsessed with controlling his family and animatronics and victims. That would even fit with a lot of what we saw in FNAF 1, where he wanted to control the ghosts of the children in those animatronics, right? Anyway, just a random thought I had. Elsewhere, the plot must continue. Paranormal investigators, led by a woman named Lisa, are invited to come take a look at the original Freddy's location, the one where Charlotte was killed. And who invited him here? Well, the security guard named Mike. But shock, it's not our Mike, but instead a new character named Michael. It's probably the creepiest face I've ever seen. They really nailed the casting on this one. My guy looks like a Skarsgård. Anyway, as they explore the building, Lisa finds a music box next to the machinery with the puppet inside, and turns it off, causing marionettes to come to life.
What?
It's been possessed by Charlotte, and the puppet has wireless control over all of the rest of the animatronics in the building. And because of that, you can guess what comes next. All of the paranormal investigators are killed off in fun, awesome ways, while the puppet possesses Lisa's body with special effects that are genuinely creative and creepy. Though interestingly, Michael recognizes Charlotte who's there. Wonder if that'll be significant later. So another thing I wanted to mention here is the fact that the puppet has a brand new power, taking control of human bodies. That was never really something we saw from the puppet in the games, and I'm not gonna lie, it really caught me off guard in the theaters, and not just because the special effects were creepy or whatever. To me, this seems like a strange choice that Scott is making now to help make other things make sense later, especially with stories like Help Wanted down the road. Those games dealt with weird AI possession, and going out of his way to introduce that sort of idea now, all of a sudden, that's a lot of work down the road that the FNAF series doesn't need. Now awake, the puppet lures Abby to the original location by pretending to be the spirits of the FNAF 1 animatronics, befriending her and helping her with some small projects. Realizing what's going on and recognizing the work of Charlotte, Vanessa also returns to the original location. It's here where she reveals that the puppet uses that wireless technology I was just talking about. That is way ahead of its time to control all of the animatronics in the building. And I mean, it is just super crazy advanced. Y'all, I can't connect to my Wi-Fi if there are like 2 walls between my phone and the router. This is wild stuff. I know that technology in FNAF has always been ridiculously advanced, but when you see it in live action and something specifically confirmed to be set in 2002 when cell phones looked like this, man, it's just a bit of a gobsmack. But Vanessa also locked down the animatronics using a special firewall so they can't leave the location, something the puppet wants to do to get revenge on all of the parents who didn't listen to her and caused her death. Why she doesn't blame Afton, or at the very least like the Golden Bunny for her death instead of the parents, who knows? It's actually something I legitimately left the theater trying to wrap my head around, so if you have any ideas, please leave them in the comments. Anyway, the puppet threatens Abby and forces Vanessa to give her the code to set them free so they can go attack the parents. Fun fact, but this was actually the scene from the script pages Scott released last year for the 10th anniversary of FNAF. I originally didn't think that this was the correct page and wrote it off because, according to the script, it was only going to be happening on page 25, which was way too early for this to happen in the movie. Like, seriously, even in the final product, page 25 is ridiculously early and does not line up with the time at all. I really have to wonder if Scott changed the page numbers to hide this, or if this was, like, something from a different draft of the script, or, man, who knows at this point. Anyway, around this same time, Mike meets Charlotte's dad, Henry, and gets a bit of an exposition dump, and then heads to the original pizzeria where he frees Vanessa. She heads out to stop the animatronics as Mike basically plays the actual FNAF 2 video game IRL, and also somehow gets snuck up on by all of the animatronics, like, multiple times. They make such a big deal about how loud the footsteps of these things are, but they jump scare Mike right next to his face. It's classic horror movie logic at its finest. Anyway, after several scary scenes, the animatronics are all eventually shut down, but the puppet possesses Abby's body. But thankfully, Mike is able to free her with another music box he conveniently got from Henry. But then Michael shows up with the reactivated animatronics and reveals that he is, dun dun dun, Michael Afton, Vanessa's brother. So this right here is actually a pretty big deal because for the longest time we thought that Mike Schmidt and Michael Afton were the same character in the game. If this is Scott officially separating those characters, at least in this canon, that makes a lot of things make way more sense. But that is a discussion for another channel. I'm pretty sure Tom is going to be talking about that in a video over at our sister location Game Theory pretty soon, so go check that out. Either way, Michael wants to continue his father's work here, both in murder and in animatronics, which I suppose explains his plan here? It's a bit unclear, but it seems like Michael wanted to wake up Charlotte, or has been trying to, or something. Like, he says, "Welcome, Charlotte," when she wakes up, but hasn't been successful in bringing her back himself. Like, he seems shocked when Lisa actually manages to wake Charlotte up. But again, that's strange, since it was pretty obvious that the music box was keeping her asleep. Whatever he was doing here, it was very unclear. And it seems like it was setting up something down the road, rather than making total sense in the here and now. Anyway, Michael wants Vanessa to join him and Charlotte in their rampage. They will both always belong to Afton. But Vanessa refused. Just before our main characters fight the dust, the FNAF 1 animatronics show up when they're hopping out of portals at the end of Avengers Endgame. The toy animatronics can save the day, but sacrificing themselves to do so. Michael runs away as Golden Freddy explains that they won't be able to hold Afton's spirit in stasis anymore, disappearing into the afterlife. Gonna be real, that kind of took me aback. I'm surprised that they'd let the original animatronic spirit kids go this early in the series. Like, I guess maybe they were just, the actors would be growing up and it wouldn't, maybe, but I wonder what big plans they have coming as a consequence of this. Mike then turns around and basically dumps Vanessa, telling her that he can't trust her and that she should stay away from him and his family. This was absolutely ridiculous, to be honest, and my whole theater was like, dude, this understandably devastates Vanessa, who basically just chose Mike and Abby over her own family. It allows for the puppet to come in and possess her body, which is fascinating. It almost feels like they're moving the storyline with Vanny and Vanessa from Security Breach up to these new movies. Either way, cue the end credits and post-credit scene showing a bunch of random guys finding Springtrap and picking them up for a new FNAF-themed horror animatronic that they're building. And then a voicemail from Henry revealing his origins as Afton's business partner and then his death at the hands of something? Probably the puppet. It was a little unclear, but it was probably the puppet, man. So, this movie was a lot, and a lot happens in it. But my biggest takeaway? They are taking these movies in a direction I just did not see coming. See, if you've been watching the theories here on the channel for a while, you'll know that
Oh yeah, I have the
they were
Igniotalus
going to
shield,
be combining and simplifying a lot of ideas and
which
even
is a bastion.
in the game. That's why Mike wasn't related to Afton, or why Security Breach era ideas and characters showed up in FNAF 1. That would then lead to the FNAF 3 movie being more of a Security Breach inspired story with the glam rock animatronics and Pizzaplex. But this movie, more or less, threw that completely out the window. Oh, not only is Mike Schmidt a character, but so is Michael Afton, and in fact we're going to make a joke about their names being the exact same. Oh, you thought that the FNAF 3 game might be a bit too weird and small scale to adapt to film? Too bad! That's basically exactly what they're setting up for the next movie. Deal with it! And then they're adding in more ideas on top of that, like the puppet being able to possess humans. Scott is going big with these films, and I just gotta respect that, man. But while that didn't turn out how I expected, other things did. Particularly what I said in our last theory before this movie came out about how these movies are really about Scott reclaiming his story and retelling it in the way that he wants to. You probably all know at this point that early FNAF games weren't really planned out. Scott was flying by the seat of his pants, riding off of some unexpected unexpected success, and some odd choices were made because of that. Timelines got funky because some characters had to exist and be active and do conflicting things decades apart. You know, that sort of thing. But the announcement Scott is going for less than a second. Promise.
Thank you po. Nasa taas po. Okay po.
Hey! Sa! Yaya! Woohoo! Wow! Wow! Yaya! Wow! Yay!
Ooh, did he sell party lizards
Yaya!
here?
Wow!
What do you mean cooking full heals?
Woohoo! Oi! Ah!
Okay, cool. It still does give you yellow hearts. Good.